And now here's part 2 of our episode. You mentioned how this was a throw it on kind of album for you. And I think to touch specifically, this is we aren't a theater podcast per se, though we do talk about theater a fair amount. But it's interesting to me how the soundtrack exists differently than the full production itself. And how it's almost like you do get the full scope of the show, I think, from listening to the soundtrack. It's a pretty good representation of the show in total.
This is a great album for that because the show is all vignettes. Mm-hmm. So there isn't so much of you're not missing a ton of the through line. And where this album does right in terms of musical theater albums is that it includes a lot of the dialogue, where a lot of shows just cut that when they're recording, especially, back in the 70s when you had to fit an entire show on one LP. That's the first thing to get cut is any sort of dialogue. But with this, it's all digital. You can just record whatever you want and then decide how long you want it to be. So I think that is a win for this album in that regard, is that you get the full emotional arc of the show and you understand, each sort of song, because of the structure of the show is sort of that cabaret kind of thing where it is someone comes out and sings a song. You're getting the stories self-contained within those songs, which I think helps this. It's a great way to approach this show, I think.
If you had to identify a definitive Sondheim moment on this recording, what would you point to and why?
A definitive Sondheim moment.
Yeah, and again, you know how we like to not define things for you on this podcast. Yeah. So I'm gonna let you define
that's
that.
Such a good one, though.
So,
I like that.
I mean, this is so chock full of certain Sondheim isms, but when I think of the stereotype of a Sondheim song, I'm thinking sort of maybe some clever wordplay. I'm thinking a character wrestling with an inner problem, someone working out their neuroses through a song, right? And I think he can go dark, but he's also he's got a lot of humor, right? So weirdly, I think the peak Sondheim song in this show is Getting Married Today.
While you were describing it, I'm like, this sounds like Not Getting Married Today.
Yeah. Because it's just, I mean, it's a patter song, but it's not like an old school, it's not like a Gilbert and Sullivan patter song. It's like someone freaking out over getting married. And it's quick, it's funny, it's everything Sondheim is good at, and it's sort of just him flexing in the middle of the show. Yeah.
And that's traditionally sung by the character Amy. And then in these recent gender-bending productions, it's been sung by a character named Jamie towards a male-identifying character, which I think is a really, I saw some bootleg footage of that, and it is that actor Jonathan Bailey. He is quite good in just about anything he does, but he kills it. And it's so interesting to see it coming out of, a male and, male-presenting character. And it is the flexibility of it, I think, is a strength of this music as well. It really lends itself to being personalized, and maybe that's just his ultimate gift. Sondheim's ultimate gift is writing poetry like that.
And it's a song that I think has been parodied a lot, right? It's sort of become, it has sort of a recognizability outside of the show, even though I don't think this show, compared to his other ones, are really it's not like a well-known show outside of theater circles.
I think that's a fair take.
Apart from it appearing in Marriage Story multiple times for some reason. There's not a lot of there's no radio hits from this. But I think that song in particular has a lot of you see it parodied around.
Though I would be remiss if I did not mention, because I was talking with my husband about this before we started recording, and he reminded me of a very young Anna Kendrick in the movie Camp, singing playing a teenager at a theater camp, singing "The Ladies Who Lunch," because that's that feels like an appropriate song for a teenager to be singing.
It's funny you mentioned that. Ashlyn's been watching Gilmore Girls here, and there's this one episode where I never watched Gilmore Girls. It was my sister's show, and something about it, like the speed of the show, I think kind of, I don't know, it resonated in my ears in a way that I couldn't be in the room. It's like that dialogue back and forth
kind of thing.
Yeah. But it was it's an episode
4,000 points for that.
Sean Gunn is in a production of Fiddler with like children. And he's singing that "Do I Love You" song to like an 8-year-old or something. It's very bizarre.
Noted DePaul alum Sean Gunn.
Sean Gunn. Oh,
yeah, went to the theater school at DePaul University, much like Michael Ashland and I.
Wow.
Hope you're doing well out there. We're going to send this to you, Sean Gunn.
Yeah, I'm sure he's listening.
Yeah,
that is so. It is Gilmore Girls is a patter show. It's absolutely, and it's same with Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Right, and it's nothing against Amy Sherman Palladino. Like, I mean,
she's got her thing.
She is very successful at what she does. It's just something, for certain people, some things just cannot. No things can be for everyone. We'll put it that way.
It's true. That's well said.
And then this also dovetails nicely with. So I haven't seen Camp. I need to see that. But there is a notable documentary on the original cast recording of the 1970 cast, the original Broadway cast, and it was lost to history for a long time, wasn't it? It was hard to find for many years.
It was I don't know if it was necessarily lost to history as much as it was a pilot for a TV show that was going to be. It was called Original Cast Recording, so it was going to be like a series documenting recordings of various.
I would have watched that.
Right, it's cool, but like none of them are going to live up to the drama of that one. The Elaine Stritch stuff at the end is just like, it's such a good, like, how do you even have a documentary have? And it was why can't I think of his name? He did The War Room. Yeah, thank you. It was D.A. Pennebaker. Yeah. So it's like you already have like lightning in a bottle. Just the people in that room. It's just and Sondheim has gone on to say that he thinks, she was maybe hamming it up for the camera a little bit. She was very conscious of
Elaine Stritch after all.
No, I won't hear of it.
But no, if no one has seen that, definitely go check it out. It's a classic.
Listener, if you've never seen it before, it's excellent. It's on the Criterion channel, the Criterion Collection now. They have an excellent version of it that came out a couple of years ago, and it is just the perfect telling of this dramatic period of time when they were recording the original cast recording album, and Elaine Stritch has a legendary part at the end. Sondheim himself comes in, and that leads us next to I would be remiss not to bring up Co-op. The documentary now episode. You are a fan. I feel like we've talked about this before.
Yeah, I'm actually. I've been on this this other podcast called Putting It Together, which is going through Sondheim's oeuvre, song by song, in chronological order. And when they did Company, I was on for a bonus episode to talk about Co-op. So you can find that. I did do a whole podcast. It was like right after. I think we recorded it like the day after it premiered or something. Yeah, it's great. It's got all so the like, and you can tell it's. I mean that show documentary now is. You can tell just the love of these things that they're parodying, but like that one in specific, they just put so much more effort into it than they needed to.
Seriously. Mulaney doing the definitive Stephen Sondheim impression, I would say.
Yes. But no, it's. I mean, even the songwriting. It's. Yeah. I think they had sent some of it to Sondheim too a little bit, and he thought it was.
I bet he loved it.
He thought it was funny. Yeah.
And Paul Appel playing the Elaine Stritch character.
Yeah, so good.
It's absolutely
so good at the end.
Legendary. I'm glad. More people need to see that, and then they'll
watch the original too, just for the amount of insane haircuts going on. there's some great cuts to just like the people in the orchestra that it's just my favorite because it's the most 70s looking people. Like they're just being, I don't know, just annoyed or something, and they're not like, none of them look thrilled to be there. Like they might as well just be like, smoking in the middle of in the room, which all of them were, but the
70s were
70s
were a hell of a time
everywhere. Yeah.
So let's get on to talking about perfection, shall we? And its role in this and our lives. We gave you the brief to share with us some perfect albums in your estimation. What was the criteria that you went to first?
One, I have like basically four major criteria in picking out a perfect album. So one is that it has to be thematically consistent. And that can be open to interpretation. Now, that is an easy win for this because it is a musical. By default, it has a story, which not a lot of thematically consistent albums have a story, but this does. However, I think it, like we mentioned, it even one-ups just your standard musical album due to its listenability in terms of you get the whole story from beginning to end. My second criteria was something that shows maturity of content or like signs of development or growth in an artist, whether that be over time through, because I think I included I think I put Beatles 1 on there, right? And I think that's like a good way of charting over time. But with this, this was the first time that Sondheim had won a Tony for music. He had won for lyrics prior to this, but this is the first time he's on his own, making his own music that gets recognized, right? So this is that jumping off point for what we think of as Stephen Sondheim. It's the first time he's really dealing with these like contemporary adult issues, trademark Sondheim complexities of relationships and characters, working out those neuroses. But on top of that, with this 2006 version, I think this is also the show becoming the mature version of itself, in that it's John Doyle taking this somewhat time capsule show and making it timeless and stripping it down. Those new orchestrations, I think it kind of canonized this into musical theater legend. My third criteria is significant cultural impact, whatever that may be. The John Doyle actor muso thing, that's still going today.
And honestly, still works.
Yeah, it does. It does. Impressive. But like, this was 2006. There wasn't a ton of that before. I mean, there was Sweeney right before this. Yeah. But now it's just like, it's almost every show is they're doing the actor muso thing. I think it's still the first show to kind of tie it into the content. The idea that the actors are playing instruments isn't just a gimmick. It's a thematic thing that other shows don't really do. It's hard to do, and I think they did it perfectly in this. And it's like, well, we can't just keep copying that sort of thing. But and then lastly, the last criteria is that it just has to have, and this is probably the most important one, and this is the reason anyone chooses any perfect album, is personal resonance. Where it had to have some sort of meaningful impact on my life. It couldn't just be something that I enjoyed. Like, there's plenty of albums I enjoy, but this one, I think, really helped, I don't know, change the trajectory of my life in a way. Like, I don't know if I would feel comfortable, I don't know, creating a musical work of my own, or even just, like, I dug into this so hard, like, just the charting out the lyrics. I dug through it in Finishing the Hat, his collection where he goes and reviews his lyrics. And when I was writing Book of Sebastian, that's kind of what my go-to was in terms of like, how do I do this? And I think this is so you can chart a lot of my work back to this album in particular. I think
2,000 points for freaking understanding the assignment.
I hope you're tallying all these points up too.
I am.
Okay, good.
I'm a pro, man. There's something
can do math.
I can do some math. there's something so great about Sondheim as well, in that for all of the sort of dourness sometimes that is in his work, it's always life affirming.
Yeah.
There's never a play that doesn't make you, we hear it in Being Alive, right? But that's the thing, that it always wells something up inside of me, that it kind of, they live on their own. And what I find very interesting about this particular production is that I think you make a very strong point about this being a step in the maturity of the show itself, because it is a living document. It's one of those, some shows get really caught in what the original conception and especially the visual idea of what that show was. But other than Elaine Stritch kind of doing the definitive Ladies Who Lunch, I might argue, I don't think I'm alone in that argument.
I would not disagree.
Right. Then besides that, it really is something that has a life of its own and is continuing to do so in a really exciting way.
It can be interpreted in a lot of, like, I've seen this done in truly a cabaret setting, in a cabaret space next to a theater where they served us all birthday cake. And the actors were milling about the tables and stuff. I think this could also be done as like an immersive theater experience. I think you could do this as a birthday party. Go to someone's apartment, stage it there. Then you can do it with this like super hyper stylized set design that they had on Broadway just recently, right? It's something that is so open to whatever you throw at it. That's something like, and this is just on the brain because it's out there now. Like, so, let's talk about Funny Girl, right? Like that's something that is so specific to a time and place. You can't really update that because it's about a real person that was in that time period, right? So it's harder to update that in a way that feels timeless.
It seems weird too for a musical that is so simple and so much about the relationships of the characters and sort of the thought processes of the characters, that it would be something that would be open to like letting a director do whatever they wanted. Because I think that, because I wouldn't call this a musical, like an auteur musical where like a director could like jump in and like really make the story their own. I mean, even though John Doyle did this whole musical instrument concept with it, it's still Sondheim. It's not. Yeah. It's not. I mean, like I would guess that there are plenty of people out there who love the musical but don't know who John Doyle is. Sorry, John Doyle, but like while he's the one who did it, it's not him imposing a worldview on the show.
Right, right. And I think Sondheim was good about that too, where he was the president of the Dramatists Guild for a while, so he's very big on copyright maintenance and artist owning the work. So he also will work with people, but he just, they need to go through him on changes. I don't know what happens anymore, but like, for example, I think that the easiest interpretation of this to do, and perhaps the laziest, would be, oh, well, Robert is gay and has suppressed that, right? But Sondheim has always pushed back against that. Even though he himself was a gay man, he said that's not what this show is about. It's not about repressing your sexual desires. It's about being open to anyone. It's about opening yourself to a relationship. It's not about coming to terms with your sexuality. It's about coming to terms with you yourself. It's about coming to terms with your fears, if anything. And I think that's what's so interesting about. And I think, Tyler, you kind of keyed on this earlier about like, why does this resonate, and why do certain shows? And I think part of it is when you're writing, just trying to be as honest as possible about yourself, which Sondheim had difficulty doing with this. He was not a married person. He didn't know what married life was like, but he knew that he himself was afraid of certain types of commitments, and he put that into the show in a way that would be difficult. It's embarrassing, right? It's putting yourself out there. There's a degree of failure. And I think that's why this rings true so much, is that it's just, even though it can be specific to a character or an interpretation, it's still universal in a way.
That makes me think of New York as a character in this play.
Yeah.
It's almost as if
New
York
it's the cliche,
is
right?
a character in this musical. Almost. But to I got a groan. I'm going to give myself 60 points for getting a groan from Michael. What's fascinating about the way that New York lives in it and the way that it's expressed through these characters in the 2006 production, as opposed to what I'm sure it felt like in the 70s, was that was picturing them in 2006 New York. Like, they really did a great job in this production, and I would say this goes to their performance too. It was so grounded. And almost quotidian, kind of throwaway TV style acting in those scenes. It felt, a lot of them feel like episodes of Friends, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. Those scenes. And so they really do an excellent job capturing 2006 New York, as I'm sure they did a pretty fun job capturing 1970.
It's an interesting take on New York too, where it's almost showing all the possibilities of it, right? You get another 100 people, right? It's like, oh, look at all these people I could meet. Look at all these people I got to have a relationship with. But Robert's experience with it is almost like, that one episode of The Twilight Zone where the guy has the slot machine or something in his hotel, and he's like, he can get whatever he wants out of it, and he's like, oh, I think I died and went to heaven, and he's like, whatever he wishes for will come to him, and then he gets bored with it, and he realizes he's stuck there for eternity, and then he realizes he's in hell. And I think that's, it's a classic Twilight Zone twist. Yeah. But I think that's what Robert's sort of experience with all this is. Like, he can get whatever he wants. He has 3 girlfriends. He's had it all, right? And they're all of different types, and but he still hasn't found, I don't know, like, he hasn't filled whatever hole in his heart that he's refusing to believe is there, kind of thing.
Well, Eric, what haven't we said about this album that you think our listeners need to hear? Is there anything on your notes that we haven't covered that you've been dying to share?
I think if you are afraid of musical theater, or maybe you think you don't like musical theater, right? I'd say give this a try, because this is so not musical theater. Or maybe it's too musical theater. But either way, it's not what you think when you hear that. If you are not a musical theater person, I don't think this is what you think it will be. And I'm not saying like, oh, you got to go, like, it's not a rock opera, right? It's not like you're like someone's like suggesting to listen to Rent or something. It's its own thing. It's not of the genre that has become what we think of as a musical theater sound. It's kind of out on its own. I think it's got like this orchestration, dare I say, has a lot in common with like that bedroom pop Sufjan Stevens sound, with like the sort of lusher but like minimal orchestrations. I don't know what it is about it. It's got this timeless quality to it.
I've never heard Sufjan Stevens defined as bedroom pop before.
I think that was the phrase, or like the group that they were called bedroom pop, and I don't know why. I think Baroque pop was another one. Baroque pop was going around for a while.
Yeah, Baroque pop. We just talked about Baroque pop.
We talked about Amy Mann,
John Bryan,
and Rufus Wainwright.
There you go.
So there's some Baroque pop for you. But I think you're totally right. There is that lush. You get definitely points for lush and Sufjan Stevens bedroom pop, because that's it is enveloping in that way. So should we run back over the points, Michael? I think he's made a pretty rock solid case.
Yeah, let's total up these points.
All right, my friend, here's what we got on the board for you. You got 300 points for talking about how there's a lot of similarity between the lush Sufjan Stevens bedroom pop orchestration and this. I got 60 points for getting a groan from Michael, which is always a goal in my day.
60 well-earned points.
You got 2,000 points for understanding the assignment with your rubric. Excellent rubric.
Thank you very much. I did work on this. I have a nice little outline, so
I can tell, and it's much appreciated. You got 4,000 points for the Gilmore Girls dog whistle, at just not hitting your ear right. 999 points for Let's Let the Music and the Words Breathe with this orchestration, with this arrangement of the score.
This whole tallying is making me sound like a real asshole.
No, you just know what angle to come at this from. 500 points for Hal Prince having his finger in a lot of different pies. because now I'm literally thinking of that.
Meat pies in that.
300 points for the Book of Job in the style of David Bowie.
I gotta dig that up. I wonder if I have like any of the music somewhere. I have to somewhere. I don't know. It's probably on like a weird hard drive somewhere.
I want to hear this.
Basement. Yeah,
give the people what they want.
Yeah.
750 points for being Mr. President of the Drama Club, and 600 points for DePaul being represented well in this podcast episode.
Hey, they took a lot of our money.
So Michael, you've heard Eric's case. You've heard the points on the board. Tell me, is Stephen Sondheim's Company 2006 cast recording, does it go to 11? Is it a perfect album?
I mean, I just want to put out there that I do think that the Elaine Stritch version of Ladies Who Lunch is iconic.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think, yeah, this one goes to 11. You got it.
Phone rings, door turns in, walks company.
And another 100 people coming at it. Dun, 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 dun. It's almost like New York is a character in the play itself.
No, you said it once, and I'm not giving you another groan. You're getting like death eyes through the Zoom right now.
You should see them, people. You should see them, listeners. So this, thanks again for doing this, Eric. You are our go-to guy for this, for all things Sondheim, and we can't wait to have you back on. Part of the This One Goes to 11 family for sure. Michael, what are we playing our people out with today? What track did we choose as our standout track?
We're actually going to play them out with The Ladies Who Lunch from the 2006 recording. Because, I feel like we got to cover are these the two most iconic songs? I think there's a lot of iconic songs from this.
They're all iconic.
Yeah.
They're all iconic. I would say that this one and Being Alive are the most iconic, though.
Yeah, you're probably right. So
we got to touch briefly. This woman does kill it. She's still great.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just sort of, it's just, Elaine Stritch, a legend, R.I.P. And I can't imagine what it must have been like for her to be cast in this and then be like, okay, you're going to sing The Ladies Who Lunch on Broadway now. And it's sort of like being cast as Stanley Kowalski.
Can you imagine if like Elaine went to see it and you just see her in the audience and you're like, oh, damn
it. No.
Yeah. Well, we should definitely listen to it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in again. Thank you to Eric. Thank you to Michael. Love you, buddy. Love you, Eric. And this one is Ladies Who Lunch. We'll see you soon.
Enjoy.
Everybody rise.